headlines of this hour on VTV News. Vietnam and Laos enduring friendship poised for growth. And streamlining process to boost public administration efficiency, according to UNDP. Financial institutions lower Asia's growth forecast.
Broadcasting from Hanoi, the capital of Vietnam. VTV News starts right now.
Good morning. It is 8 a.m. local time in Hanoi and you're watching VTV News. I'm Huyen Chen with the top stories. Now, continuing his state visit to Laos on Friday morning, State President Luong Kuong and General Secretary of the Lao People's Revolutionary Party Central Committee and President of Laos Thongloun Sisoulith attended a friendship exchange program. More in the following.
The Friendship Exchange Program was a highlight of State President Luong Kuong's state visit to Laos. The program was broadcast live on the Lao National Television. The Vietnamese state president emphasized that the shared victories of the two peoples had left behind invaluable lessons that remain profoundly relevant today. Similarly, Lao President Suphanuvong affirmed the relationship between Vietnam and Laos as one forged in the crucible of shared struggle, tempered by sacrifice, and upheld as a cornerstone of regional solidarity.
The special, loyal, and enduring solidarity between Vietnam and Laos has become a towering symbol of noble, selfless, and pure friendship. The party, state, and people of Vietnam are firmly committed to the principle that whatever Vietnam possesses, we are always ready to share with Laos.
State President Luong Kuong also emphasized that in this era of dynamic development, the party, state, and people of Vietnam strongly and comprehensively support Laos in its cause of national renewal, defense, and construction.
Youth is the driving force and future of every nation. As I look upon the young generation of Laos, I see not only the bright future of your country, but also steadfast heirs to the time-honored Vietnam-Laos special solidarity. It is my strong conviction that our two parties and states will continue to closely coordinate to create the most favorable political, institutional, and social conditions for all sectors of our societies.
And during his official visit to Laos, State President Luong Kuong also met with Prime Minister Son Siphadan. The two leaders praised recent achievements in bilateral ties and reaffirmed the commitment to deepen the special friendship and comprehensive cooperation between Vietnam and Laos. Both sides set a target to raise trade turnover to $5 billion in the coming years. And they also pledged to accelerate key infrastructure projects like the Hanoi-Vientiane Expressway and the Vientiane-Vũng Áng Railway. Cooperation in defense, security, education, health, and people-to-people exchange will also be further strengthened. Also on the same day, Vietnamese State President Luong Kuong met with President of the Lao National Assembly, Saisomphonephon Phonvihand, in Vientiane. The state president shared his experience in Vietnam's drastic implementation of state apparatus reform and amendments to the constitution and laws to create a more favorable legal corridor for future development. The Lao top legislator expressed his highest support for Vietnam's development policy and orientations, affirming that the two legislative bodies will maintain their close coordination and regular exchanges and contacts. The two leaders agreed to strengthen solidarity, continue to closely coordinate with and support each other at regional and international forums, support each other's positions on international and regional issues in accordance with the interests and concerns of each country and in harmony with the common stance of ASEAN. The relationship between Vietnam and Laos is an invaluable asset and crucial to the revolutionary cause of both countries. State President Luong Kuong affirmed this while meeting former high-ranking leaders of Laos in Vientiane on Friday as part of his two-day state visit to Laos.
At his meetings with Bounyang Varuchit and Chumali Sayason, former party general secretaries and presidents of Laos, the Vietnamese state president conveyed to them the traditional New Year Bun Pime greetings from Vietnamese top leaders. He hoped that with their prestige and extensive experience, they will continue to support and contribute ideas to further strengthening and deepening the cooperative relationship between the two parties and countries.
The Vietnamese state leader also visited Mrs. Thong Vinh Pham Bì Hain, the spouse of late Laos State President Khe Son Pham Bì Hain. She expressed confidence that the younger generations of both countries will continue to preserve and strengthen the special Laos-Vietnam relationship.
On the same day, the state president visited the Laos State President Khe Son Pham Bì Hain Museum and laid flowers to honor the late president. During his visit to the Memorial House of Lao President Suphanavong, the Vietnamese state president expressed deep admiration for the life and legacy of this steadfast revolutionary leader. He also laid a wreath at the monument to the heroes and martyrs in Vientiane, to honor and remember the indomitable spirit and sacrifices of Lao patriots who gave their lives for the nation.
Now moving on to other news, the National Assembly Standing Committee continued its 44th session on Friday, considering and giving opinions on a number of important draft laws and resolutions. The National Assembly Standing Committee agreed to submit to the National Assembly for consideration and approval a resolution on exemptions and support of tuition fees for preschool children and general education students at the upcoming 9th session. It is agreed to implement this policy from the 2025 to 2026 school year onwards until further regulations are issued. And the total state budget requirement for tuition exemption and support from the 2025 to 2026 school year is about $1.2 billion per school year. Provincial governance and public administration performance in Vietnam has seen notable improvements over the past year, with citizen satisfaction on the rise. And this is according to the 2024 Provincial Governance and Public Administration Performance Index, or PAPI, released by the United Nations Development Program, UNDP. And the report found that 7 out of 8 key areas of governance and public administration experienced an increased satisfaction rating among citizens. And among them, transparency in local decision-making, control of corruption in the public sector, environmental governance, and e-governance recorded the most significant progress. Quảng Ninh Province maintained its leading position in the rankings, scoring 47.82 points. Now, the 2024 PAPI report indicates that public trust in Vietnam's administrative system is steadily improving. And as the country pushes to streamline its administrative apparatus and also reorganize local units, it is believed that these efforts will further enhance citizen satisfaction. Our reporter spoke with a UNDP representative to learn more about how this process can improve governance at the local level.
First of all, thank you so much for joining the interview with VTV4. So the PAPI 2024 report shows improvements in 7 out of 8 indicators with local decision-making, the control of corruption in public sector, environmental governance, and also e-governance, recording the most significant progress. So how do you assess provinces and also cities' efforts in those areas?
It really shows that provincial governments are doing significant efforts to increase more effective, efficient, and citizen-oriented administration. So while we see gradual advances, there's still a gap between citizen expectations and performance across some of those dimensions, in particular when it comes to participation, when it comes to transparency in local decision-making, and on vertical accountability. Also, e-governance and environmental governance have shown improvements, but there's still a big gap. There's still a big way to go.
Vietnam has fostered the streamlining process with the removal of district-level administrative units. So how has been this reflected in the PAPI report of this year?
So in fact, when we collected the data last year, the reforms had not yet been announced, nor had they started being rolling out. However, the results from last year are still quite interesting and significant for policymakers and local leaders as they roll out these new reforms. They show areas that need greater investments. We just discussed those. But not just in terms of policy areas or services, but also regions. Where would we need some additional investments to really build that local government capacity, especially at the grassroots level? Because with now the district level being phased out, the communal governments will become even more important, and we need to make sure that they have the capacities to serve the people as is expected by the leadership of the country.
In your viewpoint, how can the streamlining process of Vietnam has been taking drive the improvements in people's satisfaction and also confidence in public administration and also provincial governance in the coming time?
I think there is enormous opportunity for the ongoing reforms to build that public confidence in local government. As we have heard, the two key objectives of the ongoing reforms are to increase efficiency and effectiveness in service delivery, to reduce the number of bottlenecks in delivering for the people. But also, we've heard it repeatedly, it's about bringing government closer to the people. That's why the communal level becomes so important. We need to make sure that even as districts phase out and provinces are merged, that these areas and the governments that will be responsible for these areas have the needed resources, capacities, expertise to serve the people. So systematically we see that women, rural residents, migrants, ethnic minorities, they score local government performance lower than other groups. So if we want to get their confidence too, the reforms are going to have to be rolled out in a way that's really inclusive and that tailors certain policies to the needs of these population groups. When you roll out such ambitious reforms, there's going to be challenges. So really important to listen and with that feedback for local leaders and national leaders to take corrective measures.
So once again, thank you so much for joining the interview with us.
Thank you so much to VTV for this opportunity. It's been a pleasure.
And as the national plan expands, the new phase of the streamlining of administrative units will take effect from July 1st. The preparations are being urgently carried out in many provinces and localities. The capital city of Hanoi is also focused on the arrangement of facilities and human resources, and the top priority now is to keep the public services uninterrupted.
Under the administrative streamlining plan, half of the current Trang Tiên ward will be a part of the newly established Hoan Kiem ward, while the other half will become a part of Ge Nam ward. This streamlining will have an impact on administrative procedures, education, and healthcare services. To help people clearly understand which new administrative unit their houses belong to, Residential Group Number 2 regularly updates information through a Zalo group, allowing for discussions and early access.
We provide images of maps and surveys to help residents understand the streamlining plan. When questions arise, we offer clear and thorough explanations.
In addition, we visit each household to gather public opinions and have also print updated boundary maps to help people visualize the changes more clearly.
To ensure a smooth transition, Hanoi has developed a plan to relocate and repurpose administrative headquarters. They aim at selecting convenient locations for the newly established wards and communes.
If the existing administrative headquarters is too small to accommodate all departments, we propose that each administrative department operates from a separate location. This approach ensures that public services remain uninterrupted. In the future, we will carry out a replanning process to consolidate all departments into a single headquarters.
The city also strategizes the allocation of personnel for the newly formed wards and communes. The goal is to balance staff qualifications across administrative units to ensure efficient governance and effective implementation of local development initiatives in the long run.
Coming up next on VTV News. Ministry of Public Security proposed abolishing death penalty for 8 offenses. And later on, a state-level parade rehearsal to begin on April 27th. Welcome back to VTV News. Now, in the draft amended penal code, the Ministry of Public Security has proposed abolishing the death penalty and replacing it with a life imprisonment without the possibility of sentence reduction for 8 out of 18 crimes. And will this proposal weaken the deterrent effect against crime? According to the Ministry of Public Security and legal experts, on the contrary. And this proposed change reflects a more humane approach and enhances the effectiveness of recovering misappropriated assets.
The proposed removal of the death penalty applies to the following crimes: acts aimed at overthrowing the People's Administration, sabotage of infrastructure and technical facilities of the Socialist Republic of Vietnam, production or trade of counterfeit medicines, illegal transportation of narcotics, crimes of aggression and acts that undermine peace, espionage, asset embezzlement, bribery. These would be replaced with the punishment of life imprisonment without the possibility of sentence reduction.
The proposal also seeks to create opportunities for offenders to take responsibility and remedy the consequences of their crimes. In some cases, offenders may come to recognize the gravity of their actions and even earn redemption through meritorious deeds.
A representative from the National Assembly's Committee on National Defense, Security, and Foreign Affairs noted that while the current penal code lists 18 offenses eligible for the death penalty, recent judicial practice suggests that the death penalty is no longer essential for certain crimes.
Due to the need to follow a highly specialized and rigorous procedure, the enforcement of the death penalty is not as swift as other forms of punishment. In practice, there have been cases where individuals sentenced to death have not been executed for an extended period.
Some people concerned that abolishing the death penalty might weaken the deterrent effect, particularly for crimes such as embezzlement and bribery. A representative from the Ministry of Public Security affirmed that removing capital punishment for these offenses would still ensure sufficient deterrence and punishment.
It ensures the practical applicability of the law and positively impacts crime prevention efforts.
Currently, 55 countries, including Vietnam, still maintain the death penalty in their legal systems. Meanwhile, 112 countries, more than double that number, either do not include the death penalty in their penal codes or no longer apply it in practice. The proposal to abolish the death penalty for 8 offenses continues to institutionalize the party's policies on crime prevention and control in the new era and reflect the humanitarian spirit of Vietnam's criminal justice policy.
Now, in other news, air pollution is a complex issue due to numerous emission sources, environmental conditions, and types of pollutants. And addressing it requires a solid foundation. First, emission inventory data, how much is emitted and from where. And second, real-time monitoring data from sources like factories and vehicles. Both domestic and international experts agree that this is essential for Vietnam to effectively tackle air pollution.
Traffic pollution in Beijing, China has been reduced by 86% through drastic measures, achieved by integrating monitored data and models. The findings shared by Chinese scientists at a recent national scientific conference were widely accepted.
Without data, then it cannot be managed. Air pollution cannot be managed. So right now, there are already existing air quality monitoring stations.
Vietnam is already taking a lot of steps to address the problem of air pollution. We know that the Vietnam has a law on environmental protection.
Current research has identified the main causes of air pollution, but monitoring data from stations remains essential. Stations on roads, near factories, or in densely populated areas each provide valuable data.
I think we know the main source. We know the main pollutant. But to convince the polluter to change, we have to provide reliable data.
Monitoring stations at all levels must avoid duplicate data to prevent waste. Localities are responsible for air pollution source data, but 40 provinces and cities have yet to fulfill this. Without it, the 2025 to 2030 National Air Quality Plan will be ineffective.
We also recommend that localities urgently implement the inventory of waste sources within the next 1 to 2 years to create a relatively complete national data set.
Despite the appeal, there needs to be strict sanctions to address delays. Without starting from a data foundation, Vietnam cannot succeed in its journey to address air pollution.
And on a lighter note, a rehearsal of the parade to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the liberation of the South and national reunification took place Friday night. And the rehearsal began at 7 p.m. on Lê Duẩn Street and some neighboring streets. Before the parade rehearsal, the celebratory performances were rehearsed, including gun dances, flag dances, and drum performances by 1,000 actors and students of the People's Police Academy of the Ministry of Public Security. Many central routes in District 1 were closed, and a traffic ban was implemented until 1 a.m. Saturday. After Friday, a state-level rehearsal is scheduled to take place on the morning of April 27th. The resistance war against the U.S. achieved a resounding victory 50 years ago, thanks to pivotal turning points both on the battlefield and in diplomatic arenas. The Truth National Political Publishing House has reissued the memoir of Family, Friends, and Country by former Vice President Nguyễn Thị Bình. And through its pages, readers are invited to revisit defining moments in the nation's history, as well as the reflections of a woman who devoted her life to the revolutionary cause, to family bonds, and to her homeland.
Madam, in your view, what does it truly mean to end a war?
It means they must genuinely desire to stop the fighting. And to do so, they must withdraw all their troops from South Vietnam.
Excerpt from a debate titled Vietnam, a media event held on the sidelines of the Paris conference, featuring Madame Nguyễn Thị Bình and around 20 prominent international journalists. At the time, the Western press likened her to the beauty dancing among wolves in what became the longest diplomatic negotiation in history. Madame Nguyễn Thị Bình was 40 years old then, a mother of two, though she rarely had the chance to be near her children.
At the Paris conference, I heard that the U.S. was bombing provinces in the north, including the one where my children were living. But I knew that, no matter the circumstances, I had to restrain my emotions to carry on with my duty.
Family, Friends, and Country is a memoir that recounts the memories, trials, and deeply felt emotions throughout the life of its author.
The memoir introduces us to a truly extraordinary figure, yet one who remains humble and approachable, embodying the finest qualities of the Vietnamese people.
Reprinted in early April, the book has seen tens of thousands of copies, distributed in over just 3 weeks. It has continuously drawn strong interest from readers, quickly becoming a publishing phenomenon during this historic April.
The memoir introduces us to a truly extraordinary figure, yet one who remains humble and approachable, embodying the finest qualities of the Vietnamese people.
At 98 years old, within 8 years of party membership, she stands as a shining example of patriotism, always placing the nation and the people above all else.
The nation is everything. It is peace, it is independence, and everything must serve that goal.
The memoir, Family, Friends, and Country, is not only a memoir of the defining moments in the remarkable life of a pioneering female diplomat, it also carries enduring meaning for the present and the future of the nation.
Coming up next in our world news. Financial institutions lower Asia's growth forecast. And U.S. Special Envoy arrives in Russia for Ukraine ceasefire talks. Now moving on to our world news, the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund IMF have revised down their economic growth forecast for the Asia-Pacific region in 2025. And in a recent update, the World Bank projected that growth in the East Asia and Pacific region will slow to 4% in 2025. Meanwhile, the IMF has lowered its regional growth forecast to 3.9% for this year. And to enhance economic resilience, the World Bank recommends focusing on 3 key policy areas, including harnessing new technologies to increase productivity, implementing reforms to strengthen competition, and expanding international cooperation to reinforce economic stability and strength. The Political Bureau of the Communist Party of China Central Committee convened a conference on Friday to assess the country's economic situation and development efforts. And the meeting was chaired by Chinese top leader Xi Jinping. The meeting acknowledged that while China's economy has shown signs of improvement by far this year, but the foundation for recovery remains fragile in the face of growing external challenges. To address this, the conference outlined a series of measures to prepare for potential worst-case scenarios, emphasizing the importance of implementing proactive macroeconomic policies. On the foreign affairs front, China will enhance support for enterprises investing abroad and actively uphold multilateralism in cooperation with the international community. U.S. President Donald Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff arrived in Moscow on Friday local time for Ukraine ceasefire talks with Russia. And this marks his 4th visit to Russia, and the trip aims to advancing negotiations to end the conflict in Ukraine. And during this visit, the U.S. special envoy is expected to hold meetings with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Just ahead of the trip, the U.S. president expressed optimism, stating that on Monday, he hopes Russia and Ukraine can reach a peace agreement within the week. In an interview with CBS, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov shared a positive outlook, saying the two sides are on the right track and reaffirmed that Moscow is ready to work toward a resolution to end the conflict. And as usual, let's move on to the weather forecast. And that's all the news we have for this hour. To rewatch our program, you can download our mobile app VTVgo or check out our YouTube channel VTV4Go. Thank you for watching and see you next time.